So we are back again with another episode where me and Lucas just talk, and hopefully someone actually decides to listen to this. So we're back with the same segments. We're sticking with the news topic, some life stuff, influencer moves, and some questions and advice. So to get us started with the news topics this week, we have AI chatbots because AI is everywhere. Really can't get rid of it. So a lot of the websites are now starting to use AI chatbots for like service. So one of the businesses that tried to use it is Watsonville Chevrolet, which if you've been online, you may have probably come across this one. People immediately started taking advantage of it. They started got it because it was using ChatGPT in the background, and it said right on the chatbot is using ChatGPT. So people started using it just to access ChatGPT for free. So they got it to write Python scripts. They got somebody managed to convince it to sell a vehicle for $1. Obviously, that wasn't legally binding, but that's pretty funny. Another company recently, they went on I think it was BBC, and they were talking about how they started using this AI chatbot and how amazing it is. And then someone immediately after tweeted how absolutely trash it was. They got it to write a poem about how terrible the company is, and it started swearing at the users. So clearly, these things are not where they're supposed to be. I guess we'll see what happens. I'm not sure why companies are thinking this is a good idea because realistically, this is what's gonna happen. It's so easy to kind of hijack them and get it to do what you want because really at the back end of it, it's all just ChatGPT, and people have kind of figured out how to exploit it pretty quickly. So we'll see if companies stop doing this because I think for Watsonville Chevrolet in specific, their traffic to their website just exploded because people realized they could just use GPT for free through Watsonville Chevrolet AI chatbot. So I think companies are going to be a little bit more hesitant to do so.
Yeah, I think AI is just a big buzzword for companies right now, even with companies who don't have any business probably using AI or benefiting from it too much right now. They put whole teams on it and start developing and trying to find places where they can introduce this new technology and then shill it off on their social medias and all that stuff saying, hey, we have this feature now. And it's like, did anyone ask for that? Or is this just something that you guys did? I feel like that's actually a lot of what's going on right now with this AI. It's like no one's asking for any of this stuff. And like sometimes it's really great, but 90% of it is just mostly useless. So my first topic isn't quite as exciting as that, but I think it is interesting because everyone heard about that Snoop Dogg campaign where he posted on his social medias that he was going smoke free. He was quitting smoking. And it didn't have hashtag ad, which is technically illegal, but it was funny anyways. So everyone just thought, this is legit. He's quitting smoking. And it generated a ton of buzz. It was genius. And then a couple days later, maybe a week later, a full commercial came out for a smoke-free fireplace campaign. And here's the thing. It generated probably tens, if not hundreds of millions of views across Twitter, Instagram, all of the platforms. And it did not sell at all. So I think this is something that needs to be talked about more is important metrics. Just because a metric is easy to track does not mean that it is always the most important metric. And this is why I think if anyone listening to this is in business or even in school, like making sure to ask your clients if you're in business or teachers if you're in school, like what is the thing that they're looking for or what is the success metric behind the activity that we're trying to provide or the service that we're trying to provide. That is, in my opinion, more important than setting these arbitrary goals and metrics that might not actually mean anything. And I understand that it is difficult to figure out what actually means something because I think like lots of people have it wrong. So if you're just kind of going with the flow, for example, take social media, sometimes the views aren't the only thing that you're trying to track. This is something from Alex Hormozy, but the type of audience that you're trying to build is arguably more important because if you're attracting the type of people that you aren't going to sell to and that aren't your ideal avatar, then there's not much point in building that audience, is there? And you might get known as the guy who makes this type of video when really that was like a one-off video that randomly blew up, and now you're stuck known as that guy. So just a balance there, and you guys can interpret that information how you want. But I think it's something that needs to be talked about more.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. The interesting thing with that is kind of what you mentioned is when he went out and said like, I'm quitting smoking or whatever, it had nothing to do with the product or service that they were promoting. Like even today's the first day I even found out that it was supposed to be an ad for a smoke-free fireplace or something. Like that's what I mean. So you're totally right where yeah, like the whatever they were trying to do, it worked, but it had no correlation with what you were trying to promote or what you were trying to achieve. So yeah, it like generated a ton of views. It like by analytics, it was super successful, but did it really do much? Not really. So yeah, it's definitely something to consider. My next topic is again AI because apparently everything now has to do with AI. Samsung recently announced Galaxy AI, which has a ton of new features. So one of these is including live translation, which is actually going to work during a phone call, which is interesting. So if you're talking to someone in a different language, you can actually just get a live translation while you're doing that. There's also this thing called Interpreter, which is more like Google Translate, but it works without Wi-Fi or cellular. So I'm not sure if that's like an entire training model that's like on a chip somewhere on the device or how that works, but that's pretty interesting. They also have this thing called Circle to Search, which if you've ever gone on Google and like tried to search a image, like it has like that thing called search image with Google, so you can find like if there's a product in the photo, it'll find like a web page where you can buy that thing. So similar to that, but more specific because you can circle the object that you're trying to look for. Chat assist, so this is basically just ChatGPT built right into the keyboard. Pretty simple there. And then generative edit, which is kind of like a magic eraser where you can just delete objects. And this is interesting. This is the reason I even put this in here in the first place, because Lucas has been talking about this whole thing about watermarking images that are heavily altered due to AI. So what they're actually going to be doing is they're going to be watermarking things in the metadata if you're erasing a bunch of things. So this is a real thing. So that's pretty cool. But an interesting thing with this Galaxy AI was there's this fine print on like the presentation slides that basically says that this is only going to be free until like 2025 or something. So what people are thinking is that since right now these features aren't like super appealing, no one really wants to pay for it. So I think what's going to happen is they're going to really try and test it out, boost, how well these features work, and then move to a paid subscription model, which makes sense. And as you probably heard me mention a few times, this is very similar to like Google Translate and search image with Google, and like the generative edit with a magic eraser, which is also a Google tool. It's because the entire thing's powered by Google Cloud. So yeah, going to be some very close similarities there.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this kind of technology. I think this is where AI is where we really get to see it shine. Things like the language barriers. This is the type of stuff where we can just see a completely different view of the world, and that's going to be pretty cool. My next topic is going to be two things. First is just a real quick note on the Apple Vision Pro coming out on February 2nd. Of course, we heard about this a long time ago, back in 2023, and it is finally going to be coming to the US first here in just about a week at the date of recording. So that is going to be super exciting and very interesting to see how different the technology and the UI is compared to the advertisements, because we know anyone can make something look good on a presentation or a keynote. But when, people like Marquez and Mr. Who's the Boss get their hands on it, I'm going to be really interested to see, first of all, how they actually structure the YouTube video and how they show what it looks like, because it's something that you have to put on your face. And secondly, if it's actually worth the hype. I'm not even going to mention if it's worth the dollars, because it's obviously not for 99% of people. But I'm looking forward to it. It is a new step in a different direction for Apple. And that is, I think, always something monumental when the biggest company in the world decides that they should be heading in a different direction. And that different direction is going to be VR, AR. So yeah, that's something I'm looking forward to. And the other thing is going to be deep faking technology in the elections. So if you live in the US, the elections are going to be coming up later in 2024 this year. And there's been a lot of talk ever since ChatGPT and the deepfake technology has been getting significantly better over the last year about what's going to be happening with campaigns, just verification of real people and who's making these advertisements, what's going into them, how can you tell anymore? Because to be honest, people who are listening to this podcast and myself and Pavan, we're smart enough and we know enough about this technology to see something that isn't right and spot it pretty quickly. Right now, that might change in the future, but even right now, some people, older people who are unaware, they might not be able to tell the difference between a deepfake prime minister or president and a real prime minister or president. Specifically, more than 100 deepfake video advertisements impersonating Rishi Sunak were promoted on Facebook in the last month. And this is, I believe, a UK election. And the adverts reached over 400,000 people. And no one from this prime minister's or, this candidate's team put out those videos. So it's kind of a precursor, I think, to what we're going to see in the US on a much larger scale. And I'm very interested to see the precautions that the government is going to have to take in order to make this technology safe and make the election. I don't know how it's going to get worse than last year, but honestly, I can imagine, actually. I can see it happening. And then also to what Pavan said about the metadata being watermarked. Dude, Samsung hired me already. I literally said that like a year ago. So yeah, I'm happy about that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's kind of why I put that story in there, because I figured you'd be pretty interested in it. It's totally a good point. And I think this is kind of where a lot of people are thinking like blockchain technology could be interesting, because there's a lot of validation that can happen there. I think that's where some of the hype was as well. I hope that's not what that's used for. I think it's overly complicated for what it is. I think, yeah, exactly. Something like in the metadata where you can have some sort of, but then again, that comes into consideration of like, okay, who manages this? Like what is it? Like what kind of token or what kind of, piece of, text do you add into there to say, hey, this is real? So yeah, it has its complications, but I guess we'll see what happens. But similarly, like OpenAI recently announced that they have a new policy that doesn't allow any sort of OpenAI, like ChatGPT use in any sort of political sense. So if you're trying to use it for any sort of campaigning or things like that, your account will get banned. So this actually happened recently. There's a startup called Delphi, which was basically they were hired by a representative named Dean Phillips. So this is in the US, and it was their party, like people that ended up hiring them out to make a bot called Dean.bot, which is just a chatbot which is supposed to mimic him, and it would converse with voters in real time through a website. So this has already been happening, and they were immediately banned from OpenAI, so they can't use the platform anymore. So yeah, I mean, it makes sense that people would be trying to do this. What the funny thing was that the response from the party was that they're going to try and use an open source version that's not from OpenAI to do the exact same thing. So I guess they're just searching for a different AI like source, I guess. But I think ChatGPT is obviously the best. So I don't know how far they're going to get with that, but it will be interesting because there's a lot that happened last election, like you mentioned, and this time there's even more. So I guess we'll see what happens.
All right, let's move on to our next section now, which is going to be about life, productivity, habits, development, all that sort of stuff. And this week I am talking about actually a new supplement that I've started taking. It's a pill called ashwagandha. It's gotten quite a bit of media exposure recently. I'd say it's a new type of supplement, but it's very well researched and, in my opinion, safe. And I've been taking it for about six days now. And basically what it does is it helps with stress and anxiety, and basically, it helps your sleep and just overall productivity and function in your day-to-day life. And in my opinion, it has helped undeniably, definitely on the anxiety and stress side of things. And yeah, in the sleep, I've been able to get up earlier in the morning, which is a nice feeling, and wake up just feeling better rested. And I think I think that's just kind of in line with helping the stress because it's easier to fall asleep. You're more relaxed, that sort of thing. But overall, I've been taking quite a lot of different supplements here just for like digestion and stuff. And yeah, quality of life has definitely gone up. I think the type of people that we are and who are listening to this podcast, we work a lot and we tend to get caught up in our work and maybe not focus on other things that we should be focusing on and prioritizing, like health, for example. And I think I definitely neglected that in 2023, which I think for a certain amount of time, it is fine because priorities are priorities. And at a certain point, you do have to sacrifice some things to get to where you want to go. But the more I thought about it, it was just getting worse and worse, like just my gut health and my mental state. And it wasn't like at a point that's horrible by any means, but by my standards, it was dropping far too low. And so I decided to do something about it. And so that's what I've been working on lately. And yeah, I've been experiencing better just mental capacity and focus, and also physical exertion is a lot easier. And yesterday I did 21 kilometers on the treadmill, so that was good. So yeah, overall, like I'm doing good right now. Work is good. The working out is great right now. So I recommend ashwagandha. It's probably not for everybody, but if you're looking for something that's a low risk method to help lower your stress levels, if you're in school or you work a lot, something simple you can take every morning.
Very interesting. I will definitely have to look into it a bit more. I heard about this like I would say at least a year ago. It's kind of been on my radar for a while, but I never, again, as you mentioned, we always get caught up doing other things and it kind of just slipped on the back burner, I guess. But this is definitely interesting to see your experience with it. I'll do some more research and I will let you know if I decide to use it. I'm curious. So you mentioned you're using some other supplements. Are you using something like vitamin D? Because I know, like here especially, we don't get enough sunlight. That's for sure. Or like anything else. I'm just curious what you're using right now.
Yeah, good question. Vitamin D for sure. That's 100%. If you're in Canada, you know that we get rain most of the time, and it's hard to get sunlight in the morning, which is also important in the winter here. And then the other thing, it's a probiotic called Align, and it's very popular. A lot of people take it for digestion, and yeah, just tons of probiotic materials in it. So those are kind of the three things: zinc, the vitamin D, Align, and then ashwagandha. And it kind of sounds like a lot. I mean, you just get in a routine. You take them all. You know, do it one after another. Have it in your notes. It's not too bad.
So that's pretty sick. Yeah, I will definitely be doing more research into this, and I will keep you updated. Next thing that both Lucas and I tried out this week is the Notion Calendar desktop app, which just released, I believe. So this has been interesting. I've actually really enjoyed it because for whatever reason, I only use like the Google Calendar app on my phone. Like I never open it on desktop for some reason. So having like this built in as like a really nice desktop app and then getting all of my Google Calendar stuff ported in automatically, it's been great. Like having it on a bigger screen, I've really enjoyed it. And the fact that it gives me like notifications for meetings and things like that, it's been great. But I think my favorite thing by far is the fact that you can link to Notion pages right in there. It like just for meetings, it's so much easier because you can just have like a meeting and then just be like, oh, like I forgot to make a page for this, but you can just make the page right there and you're good to go. And being Notion that it is, you can use like Markdown to format all your notes and things like that. So it's been fun. What about you? What do you think?
Yeah, that notification was a very pleasant surprise. Midway through the week, they just announced that Notion Calendar is available. And it's something that I've been wanting for a long time because Notion is the main way that I think both of us keep track of our lives and tasks and all that fun stuff. And for me, having a bunch of apps just isn't what I love. I'd rather just have one thing that can take care of everything. So the fact that Notion finally has a usable calendar is super exciting, to be honest. And yeah, just the integration, Notion's integration is I mean, by far the best I've ever seen in a productivity app. So the fact that it's coming to calendar with linking pages, and yeah, I'm looking forward to it. The notifications are also a really nice feature on the desktop on my Mac. It'll actually tell me, like, you know, in 12 hours you have a meeting with so and so, and I'm like, oh, cool, I guess. I mean, thanks for the reminder, the stress, but all right. So yeah, it's been good. Next up, our topic is going to be influencer moves. And this is just talking about interesting business or creative decisions that are happening with prominent creators. And what I saw recently is Airac moving to streaming services, including Fire TV and Sky TV, with assumingly more to come. And this is part of a larger trend that we've been seeing of creators helping their businesses make passive income off of a subscription model. And they're not doing this themselves. They'll partner with agencies and they'll partner with other businesses and take percentages. But we've seen Rhett and Link do this with their Good Mythical Morning Show. And, you know, they have a whole production team. They're really a standout business. Preston Plays and Dude Perfect is another huge example. What they've been able to do now, even making theme parks and everything, it's very impressive. But they have their own streaming service, which is available on smart TVs, similar to Netflix or Disney or any other streaming platform that you guys use. And it's just a library of their stuff. That simple. No ads, subscription model, pretty basic, but I think it's just a natural progression. And for creators that people really like, I can see parents buying it for kids. You know, if the Sidemen had a streaming service, I could see tons of people signing up for that. Of course, they have their Side Plus, which is a premium model. I believe it's $6 a month. But having your own streaming platform seems a little bit more high end. I don't know. It feels, I don't know if it's one answer is better than the other. I don't know if, you know, a Patreon is the right way to go compared to making a streaming platform. But it's going to be very interesting to see how these creators make out and if it's actually worth their time. Another thing, Mr. Beast also just tested out posting a full length video to Twitter, and he talked about the monetization on it. You know, who better to test it than Mr. Beast with possibly the biggest reach of anyone in the world. And yeah, he had some doubts about the creator revenue structure and how much they would get paid. And obviously the views are not going to be the same as what it is on YouTube. And the money isn't going to be as close either. YouTube has such a monopoly on their model, their free with ads model. It's going to be difficult to beat them no matter how much Elon Musk tweets about it. I actually deleted Twitter, so I don't see any of this stuff anymore, but I hear about it on all the newsletters. So that's just something I felt like it's going to be interesting going forward if creators become Twitter or X creators only. How crazy would that be?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. In terms of like what you were mentioning about how creators having their own streaming service, I think the first one that I ever saw was Floatplane from like Linus Tech Tips. They've been working on their own, like Floatplane, by the way, is like their own streaming service that they built from the ground up. And they've been working on it for, I don't even know how many years, pretty much for as long as I've watched them, to be honest. But for them, it's different because their audience is very like tech savvy and in that space. So they weren't like super, you know, they were pretty easy to please if like when they started it off and it didn't look that great and things like that, you know, like the UI didn't have to be amazing. They didn't have to work all the time. They knew that there's going to be bugs and errors because making a streaming platform is very difficult. You know, you have to like have a server somewhere to store all of your videos and like be able to stream it properly. And to do all of that is definitely not easy. So like you mentioned, it's going to be an interesting thing to see if it's worth for all of these creators to have all that upkeep all the time. But I guess we'll see. The Twitter thing is interesting though, in terms of like what you mentioned with how the monetization on that is going to work. Because if I remember correctly, isn't Elon mentioning that creators will be able to keep 100% of what they make on there?
I think it was either 100 or 90%. I mean, come on, he tweets like once every hour, so it's hard to keep up, but it was way more than the YouTube split, which is something that, you know, pretty much all new businesses can do, is offer a better deal to their customers or their clients. That's usually how smaller businesses can start gaining momentum, is because, larger businesses have outdated models and they've gotten comfortable. And yeah, it's been, a decade of YouTube domination. So obviously there's always potential for a new player to come in. It's just not likely.
Yeah, definitely. The interesting thing that I was looking into is like Elon Musk's AI business that he's working on called XAI. I kind of am starting to realize why he may have purchased X, because it turns out that he's going to be using like X, or I don't know what they call them instead of tweets now, but whatever they are, as sort of like a database or something to refer to for XAI, which is so like that's their way of connecting it to like live internet essentially is tweets, which is interesting because obviously that's not particularly the most like trustable source, but if that's what he's using, it's at least starting to make a little bit more sense as to why he would have purchased all of Twitter and then just like driven it down to the ground from an outsider's perspective. But if he's using it for XAI, then it makes a bit more sense.
All right. So in this segment, I'm going to ask a question or an advice I think a lot of people struggle with, and Pavan's going to give me his honest opinion on it and see if he can help me out. My question is, how do you stay patient when you think you deserve something right now in the moment, but if you take your time, it's going to work itself out in a year or even a couple of months? Because I find that when you're in the moment, time seems to move like so incredibly slow, and it can cause you to make bad decisions, whether it business, personal relationships, real relationships. But then when you zoom out over the course of a year or 6 months, you could have just been patient and stuck with the process and seen better results, or actually gotten the thing that you wanted. So basically it's like, I think I deserve this thing now, but I know it's going to come to me in the future. So how do you deal with that thought?
That one's actually really tough because there's like you mentioned, in the moment you definitely think you deserve it and you've been working at it probably for at least a little bit, but it's not really giving you anything right now. The easiest example that I can think of is for social media, but that one's honestly, if anything, easier to deal with because that if you just keep doing what you're doing consistently and you're making quality content and you're improving upon it, there's going to be a point in time where you're going to hit the right audience and it's going to go somewhere, right? Like it's pretty unlikely that it won't unless you just stop. So I don't know. I guess you could apply that analogy to other things too, but I definitely like it's tough for sure because yeah, it's always hard to zoom out, I would say. But I think there's a few different analogies you can look at, right? Like one of the ones that always has stuck out to me is like if you're planting a seed, like if you're planting some sort of plant, right? You take a seed and you stick it in the ground, you water it, and I'm sure I guarantee you've heard this one before, but you don't dig up that seed every 5 days to check on if it's going or not. It's gonna grow, but it's just to apply that analogy to everything is not easy though. But that is the analogy. Is you essentially just have to plant it and just let it happen and just keep working at it. In the same way that if you planted that seed and you still keep watering it and you still give it sunlight, same idea. You just keep doing the thing and eventually something will come of it. When that's going to happen isn't necessarily known, but you'll get there someday.
Yeah, I think YouTube is probably a great example of this in the business side of things. It's like you can make great videos, but sometimes it does just take time for the right audience to see it and to start gaining traction. Of course, there's probably 100,000 different little strategies that you could do to get you there faster. But yeah, I agree that sometimes you just have to stick the course. And these, just so anyone listening is clear, these questions are, Pavan or myself doesn't look at them beforehand. If I'm asking him a question, he doesn't know what I'm about to ask. And these are questions that I can't answer. So it's not an easy question to answer. And I don't expect him to just have a perfect solution for me. But that's kind of why we're here, just to talk about it, because I think these are kind of universal problems that can apply to your work, relationships. Like take a relationship, for example. Like, you might think that it needs to happen right now. And, a month away or, waiting a week to see someone is like so long. But dude, come on. If you're serious about it, like a week or even a month, that's such a small amount of time. And it might be easy to talk about it with someone, but sometimes when you're in your own head and you don't have anyone to think these thoughts through, a week or a month starts feeling like a really long time. So yeah, it's just my thoughts on it.
It's a balancing act for sure. You gotta know when to like transition, I guess you could say, because there is some point in time where you might have to switch. But there is also an argument to be made that you should just stick with it for as long as you can, which is true for most things, whether it be, again, business, relationship, or investing, anything like that. Most things require a long time horizon, and if you can start thinking in those long time horizons, you're probably going to do better off than most people. I think Hermosi has one quote where it's like, think in decades or something, right? I don't know, something like that. But it's just a thing. Like if you can wait to realize your gains for longer, you're probably going to get a higher gain than anyone else. So that's just how it is.
Yep. Ending off with Hermosi again. What a legend. Yeah. Yeah, this is pretty much the end of the episode. If you guys did enjoy this episode, make sure you leave a 5-star review and share it with a friend. Other than that, we're done.
Peace.
Peace.